lot more people when you're up on stage. This is crazy.
Okay, so I would just like to start by saying I lost my speech about 20 minutes before I came up here, so we're gonna kind of wing it. So if this seems really like choppy and not as like, you know, thought out as Romans was, that's probably because I lost my speech, so yeah. Okay. The word real, by definition, means something actually existing, something genuine, authentic, or true. We use it when we're describing people, stories, things we see online, basically anything that we feel connected to. You know, we as people, we love the word real. We'll like see somebody do something and we'll be like, that's so real. But we're hypocrites. We spend our time watching movies which are just fake stories. You know, we love going to bed and dreaming because we get to escape the real world and go into like this fantasy that's not really real. We watch influencers online who don't show us their real lives. We spend our time talking to people online that we barely know, and we don't even talk like real people. You know, we use like shortened phrases and words, you know, like instead of like, how are you, H-R-U, like, you know, we don't even use real words. And we do this because we don't want to come off as weird or unique in any way, you know. We say that we hate fake people, you know, like we're like, oh my gosh, she's so fake. You know, we say that we hate fake people. But we live in a fake world and we worship fake things. I'm Audrey. I'm in 8th grade, like some of you guys in the crowd. And until September 21st, 2025, so like 7 months ago, I didn't think that God was real, you know? I didn't think that he was real. I thought that he was one of those things, kind of like a Disney movie, or like, you know, something that parents come up with, like a nursery rhyme where they're like, you know, like, he's kind of there to get you to do all these things, and I didn't think that he was real. But a year prior to that, September 2024, so the beginning of 7th grade for me, I developed a mental disorder called contamination OCD. OCD is not what a lot of people think that it is. A lot of people think that OCD is like really type A people, or people who are germaphobes and are like, ew, don't touch my food, don't do that. That's not what OCD is. OCD is a real mental disorder. It stands for obsessive compulsive disorder, and it causes people to have like weird obsessions and reoccurring thoughts and just weird stuff. I specifically had contamination OCD, which causes me to think that a certain thing is contaminated. And that thing is called like your trigger. And your trigger can be anything. It can be dust, it can be dirt, it can be like certain smells, like, I don't know, certain textures. It can literally be anything. For me, my trigger was human flesh. So what that looked like for me was I couldn't touch any human beings. You know, I couldn't give people hugs, fist bumps, high fives. If somebody rested their hand on my shoulder, I would freak out. I couldn't touch this, you know, because Roman was just up here and said his stuff on it. Like, you know, everything that anybody had touched was contaminated. Doorknobs, faucets, kitchen counters, my couch in my house, like everything in the world that I lived in, my mind told me was contaminated or dangerous. And that was really hard to live like that because, you know, it's unrealistic to live in a world where you avoid everything around you. Like, that's not humanly possible, you know? It's not socially acceptable to live like that. So I started going insane, obviously. And I was miserable all the time. Whenever I would try and like touch things or force myself to act like a normal human being, it would leave this like terrible lingering feeling of disgust. I just couldn't get away from it, and my OCD just consumed my life. I found 2 different ways to cope with what I was dealing with because there was nothing that I could do about it. So my first way that I coped was through my sport. I'm a competitive swimmer, which is pretty fun. And I started putting all of my time and all of my effort into swimming, you know? I was training about 9 times a week, I think. Yeah, 9 times a week. And then also doing weights along with that, which some high schoolers don't even practice that much, and I wouldn't recommend it because it really sucks. I got really good at swimming, and I told myself that I was swimming because I loved the sport, and it was my passion, you know, it was my dream, like, I love swimming, you know, this is what I wanted my life to be about, but looking back, I was not swimming because I loved the sport, I was swimming because I hated myself. The second way that I started to cope with my OCD, because, swimming wasn't doing what I needed to do, I started self-harming, which, very bad idea, guys, don't do that. And I just really hated myself. I thought that my OCD was not only ruining my life, but everybody around me. I thought that it was ruining all of their lives. My house was really hard to live in for not just me, but my family, because I had to have all of them be out of my way, if my dad would come within 10 feet of me, it was sending me into a panic attack, which was really hard. I thought that my family hated me. I thought that, I didn't tell any of my friends what was going on, but I thought that they all hated me because of the way that I was acting. And I just really wanted to die. I fell into this deep depression. All the days started blowing together. I just lost all motivation to do anything except for swim and focused on my OCD. And I lived like that for a year. So all of my 7th grade year, starting in September 2024, all throughout 7th grade year, over 2025 summer, and then to September 2025. And I did not go to this school last year. I went to a different school. I started this school this year, so I'm new this year. And for the first month of going to school here, everything was pretty much the same. It was just pretty miserable, just really struggling with everything. But then on September 19th, we had to go to California for my grandma's 80th birthday party. It was a rager, guys. It was really great. But of course, that's really difficult for me because traveling on a plane with OCD is not fun. But on the way back from that trip, I was sitting in the Sacramento airport, of all places, the Sacramento airport, pretty not Jesus-y, when just the weirdest feeling came over me. I was just sitting there doing nothing out of the ordinary, just people watching, kind of just sitting there being miserable, being gosh, my life sucks. And then I was just hit with this feeling, I have a really hard time describing this because it was so weird, but it was like I was really nervous and sad, but then also really excited and happy. I was really in the present, but also really nostalgic. I was my mind was kind of falling asleep, but I was also wide awake. It was my mind and my body were separated. I don't know why God decided to do what he did, but in that moment, I just knew that it was God speaking to me. And by the way, at this point, I didn't really believe in God, so going from not believing in God to knowing that he's attacking you is kind of terrifying. In that moment, I realized that I was an idiot, that I had been spending an entire year of my life focusing on things that weren't real, all the feelings that OCD made me feel and all the fears and stuff, that wasn't real. It was caused by a mental disorder and it was taking over my life. And I really felt like an idiot. I got home that night at around midnight and went to bed because I was tired, and then I woke up the next day on September 21st, and I just kind of knew what I had to do. I quit OCD. I stopped doing everything, I forced myself to touch everything around me, to hug my parents, to pet my dog, which I hadn't done in over a year, to function like a normal human being, and it really sucked. It really did. I was going insane for the first bit that I was doing it, but here I am 7 months later, OCD free. So yeah, probably the best way and it didn't really hit me what I was doing until 2 weeks after I made that decision, so sometime in early October, when my sister told me that my parents had been planning on sending me away to an institution, so to a mental hospital for crazy people, because I couldn't function in our life anymore. And that's when it really hit me, how bad what had been happening to me was, how bad I'd let my life get. So yeah, I just spent all my time focusing on something that wasn't real, and that's really not what you're supposed to do. I shut everybody out of my life, and that's not how we're meant to live. We're meant to live in community with each other. We're meant to be honest with each other. We're meant to be real with each other. We're meant to have genuine relationships with people. And we can't do that if we're not being real people. Ecclesiastes 4:9-10 says, 2 are better than 1 because they have good return in their labor. If either of them falls down, one can help the other up, but pity anyone who falls and has no one to help them up. That's what it's like when you aren't real with people and you aren't honest with people. You're gonna fall down, you're gonna have nobody to help you get back up, and then your life's gonna go to crap. So really just try and be a real person, have community with everybody, because we need to be real with each other. That was not at all how I planned it out because I lost my script, but thank you guys so much for letting me speak.